Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our 2019 Oscar Movie Marathon. I'm Christiana Ellis.
I am Mike Mateen.
Now we're a week and some past the awards ceremony now, but at long last we were able to catch back up. Let's recap. We're going to talk about any movies we saw since our last update, and then also break down the winners and just basically conclude this year's uh, thing that we did.
Yes, I'm excited. I think this is my first time over 50% in several years.
Great.
So I saw more than half.
And here is the key question. As we always mention when we start this every year, the real goal of this whole effort is: did you see movies that you wouldn't have seen otherwise but really liked?
Yes.
Are there
Um,
ones that leap right to mind?
um, well, the one that leaps to mind is tricky because I feel like I may have eventually seen it
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, but I am so glad that I saw it, and that's Free Solo.
Okay, great.
Uh,
Well, well,
that is an amazing documentary. So, yeah.
I so the I don't want to make sorry, I'm just focusing on technical things that are not helpful at the moment. Never mind that. That's great. So Free Solo, how did you watch it? Where is that one available?
It's actually available right now. It's actually available on National Geographic for anybody.
Okay.
That wasn't the case before the Oscars, but it is currently now. Anyone can watch it on the National Geo channel, um, so I've seen it now a second time since then because it was that interesting to me and that impactful of a documentary. It's really 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 good.
Okay.
Uh,
I'm yeah, sorry, I'm a little bit distracted just because your video is very laggy. Your sound is fine, but if we have to make do with the laggy video, that's fine. Because I can hear you. You're not breaking up. It's just we're getting
yeah,
like 2 frames per second, if not less than that.
yeah, I don't really know how to fix that. So
Oh well. Um, Somehow our signal, our Hangout communication signal, is not what it ideally could be, but I can hear you just fine. So, well, everyone just have to understand that you're animated on twos, which not to be taken literally, but that has been an interesting bit of animation discourse that I was not really aware of before this year, but have become more aware of both due to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but also the Netflix show The Dragon Prince, when there's this whole ongoing conversation about animation frame rates and how that can be used for different storytelling, and when it's sometimes used more effectively and sometimes less. And when it's used less effectively, it tends to produce what we're seeing right now. That's fine. Don't worry about it. So, Free Solo. Tell us a little bit about Free Solo.
so Free Solo is the story of a rock climber who is, obviously one of the top rock climbers in the world, and is known for doing a technique of rock climbing called free soloing, which is having no safety equipment and climbing by yourself. And he has done all of the major rock climbing successes, or challenges that we know of, except for the what's called El Capitan in Yosemite, which is a 3,000-foot granite rock wall that no one has ever free soloed. And so the movie is about his quest to become the first free solo climb of El Capitan. And it's just a very interesting personality story, because obviously, like, a guy who does that for his vocation, there are things that are interesting about him.
Yeah. Well, like,
Yeah.
I know that my first thought when you describe what free soloing is that sound like, I don't want to say stupid. That's a little more judgmental than I really mean, but it does just kind of strike me as, I could see the idea of not using things that decrease the difficulty, but like, but it seems excessive to me to also say, "Oh, and if I fall, I just die." That
Correct.
that seems like uh, not the approach that appeals to me. But obviously, I would be interested to hear what goes into the decision making process of someone who feels like that's what they want to do.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the really, really great parts of the movie, is the way that he makes decisions a couple of times on when he's trying to attempt certain things. And again, like, I know we're kind of doing the cursory,
Mm-hmm.
especially since it's available and you could watch it and we could have a deeper discussion if you enjoy it as much as I did. Um, but there is a lot about, like, what why he chooses to do it. There's another really great sub thread of the filmmakers actually, kind of breaking the fourth wall. I guess you don't really do that in a documentary, but, like, speaking to the camera about the challenges of making this movie, knowing that they made film their friend dying,
Right.
and what could potentially be their agency in that, if the fact that all the cameras they're setting up were what distracted him to the point where he was unable to do it correctly.
Right. Yeah.
And the guilt that they would feel, even if it wasn't like, like, he's never going to look at the camera and be like, oh, I forgot that was there, and, like, his hands, like, it's not like it's not that simple.
Mm-hmm.
you know and but there's a very interesting, like, sort of reckoning that they have with it, which is then coupled by the fact that the way they set up the cameras is some of the most amazing rock climbing footage I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Uh, the combination of, like, so they did a number of things in that they went and they actually put some remote cameras and actually pre-installed them, knowing the routes he was going to be taking for some of the different, not just his free solo attempt, but, like, some of his practice rounds and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. So there are remote cameras that he's unaware of, or, I mean, he could be aware of them, but they're not distracting because they've been implanted into the rocks, and
Right.
they control them by the remote. Then there are some parts where there are other professional rock climbers who are also camera operators who, do some of the more intimate stuff with him. And then there's some drone stuff. And the way that they've just captured all of this footage, put it together with the story of, like, what would drive somebody to think that this was why would you want to do this?
Yeah.
And what makes you this person is so good at this that you are capable of doing this and want to do this. And then the reflection of, should we be encouraging him and filming him to do this? And that whole combination just comes together really well in a very, very interesting, thrilling story that I left saying, wow, I really enjoyed that, to the point, like I said, when it came on Nat Geo, I DVR'd it and have watched it again and enjoyed it just as much the second time.
Wow.
So,
I know that I
having
saw.
not seen any of the other documentaries, I would say, I saw RBG, but I would
Yeah.
say it was way better than that.
Okay. Well, I know I saw a headline that was basically, "This Oscar-winning documentary is making people nervous," and I guess it's just people feeling anxiety trying to watch him do that.
Well, yeah, and it because of some of the remote cameras and stuff, like they've captured angles that I haven't seen before. So, like for example, like just picture, a camera 100 yards above, like this really steep rock climbing ascent that is pointing down on a person who is focusing solely on the rock climbing because the camera is not in his viewpoint. And so there's sort of a vertigo thing with that because you can see 2,000 feet below him the forest, and know that and there is that whole if he missed one grip here, he's in that forest.
Yeah.
There is no safety. He has no ropes on him, and I've just never seen that in a rock climbing film.
Yeah.
That's just not an angle you normally see, and it's not a style of climbing you normally see.
It sounds terrifying. Although, what it actually makes me think of, though, is it was a few years ago that it was called, Life on a Wire or something, and it was about the guy who...
Yeah, did the high wire between the buildings?
Yeah, and so, I guess you could certainly make the case that is as, it's a similar degree of daredevilry.
Yeah, but it's just, for me, the whole, Yosemite is beautiful, so the backdrop, there's the danger with the beauty, whereas, Man on a Wire, he was walking between two buildings, yeah, it was dangerous and thrilling, but there's not that inherent,
man versus nature.
Man versus nature, you're in this beautiful setting that can kill you, and we have ways that you could still enjoy what you're doing and not be almost be dead if you miss, and yet you are choosing to
yeah
it's and again there's and it's all coupled with the personality study into him and what drives him and why he's kind of okay with this. It's very, very good.
Okay, cool. So especially now that that's the winning movie and that it seems as though it's readily available if you have the National Geographic Channel, people should check that out. I'm going to suggest that we try one more time to hang up this Hangout and bring you back in just on the off chance that it fixes this video issue that we weren't having before and now are. So, because if we could fix it, that would be better.
I'm okay with that.
All right, so I'm gonna hang up this call and try to bring you back in.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Now, watch this digital high wire act of daredevilry, ladies and gentlemen, as I attempt to perform feats which will amaze and astound you by bringing my friend back onto a video call. Hopefully. Do-do-do-do-do. All right.
Okay.
I hear you, but no camera.
I started it with no video just to see.
Okay.
And if I then bring in video, what happens?
Let's see. There you are.
It feels like it's still doing it.
It seems like it's marginally better than it was.
Well,
it is better than it was, for sure. But yeah, okay. So in any event, even this is enough of an improvement that I'm glad we did it. But in the meantime, though, so I actually didn't manage to see any new movies since our last update, partly because immediately after our last update, I was on vacation for a week. And then since then, I've been scrambling to make up work from being on vacation for a week. So what other movies did you see since our last update?
I think the only other one I saw was The Favorite.
Okay. Well, so if that's the only other one, then let's discuss The Favorite, because I had seen that already, so we can do that one in depth, and then we'll wrap up by just kind of going down the list and chatting about each of the winning categories and whether we have anything to say about those things. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, so what I said about The Favorite was that I really liked it, but with an acknowledgement that it felt really custom tailored to things that I like in movies. So I don't know that everyone would feel that way, but what was your take?
Ultimately I liked it. But I was not ready for how the story that was going to be told, and the pacing, and the view, and like all of the things that make it kind of what it is. I wasn't prepared for that because I hadn't seen any of his other movies. I realized I was aware of what they were, and that they were weird, but I'd never actually seen them, and I didn't think it was going to be as like darkly funny as it was going to be. So it was sort of off-putting, and to your point, like, yeah, if you're not, if it's not what you like, it's a very odd movie.
Yeah, for sure. One thing
I ultimately left it satisfied and happy, and kind of laughed at some parts. And
well, so I feel like the trailer. Did you watch the trailer before seeing it?
I mean, I had, but
okay. I just was going to say I felt like the trailer was a fairly good indicator of sort of the tone that the movie strikes. If anything, I think the movie's a bit more serious than the trailer might indicate. But one of the things that the trailer I don't think fully conveys is how interesting and unusual it feels to have a movie in this setting and time period filmed only with natural light.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have even thought before seeing it that would be as unusual as it actually feels watching it, especially interior night scenes where it's all candlelight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in particular, like that some of the cinematography in those areas really stood out to me. And there's a shot in particular where Rachel Weisz's character has been sneaking through her little tunnel. You know, it's not really a tunnel, it's a hallway, I guess, but her secret passage to the Queen's chambers, and has just discovered, you know, she sees what she sees there, which, I don't know, we can discuss how much spoilery we want to get, but she sees something she's very surprised by. And so the shot of her returning, where she's passing through this darkened corridor, and the only light in the scene is the candle she is holding.
Right.
And so it illuminates pretty much just her face as she is reacting to what she saw. And like, that shot really stood out to me. Like, I don't feel like I've ever seen anything like this before.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and there's definitely like that, shots like that where you've never seen, like, you don't feel like you've seen anything like that. And then there's some other just interesting shots with like wide angle lenses that, you know, almost like fisheye, that in odd spots, that kind of leave you, which that's the whole point, is it's supposed to leave you feeling like the characters are feeling based on the cinematography. Right. And, you know, and I know we'll get into the winners, but while I did really like the cinematography of Roma, I was a little partial to this after having seen it. Yeah, you know?
Yeah. I liked both a lot, and I would have had a hard time choosing between the two, honestly. But I agree. I feel like for my vote, if I were voting for best cinematography, it would have definitely been between these two, in my opinion.
Okay. Okay.
And the other things that, you know, when I say it felt custom tailored to things that I like in movies, other things that I include in that are smart female characters that are sharply drawn and have razor sharp wit and good dialogue.
Yep.
And that is this, that's this movie's meat and potatoes, is that stuff. Because it's these three women characters jockeying for position with their various motivations and agendas. And there are some men in there doing their thing, but it's kind of secondary and external to this central triangle, which I thought was really interesting. One thing that I didn't know when I saw it is that it is actually based on real history. There are obviously things in this movie that are inferred or speculated on, between the lines of the history books, so to speak.
Right. Some of the rumors that are left from the history.
Right. But a lot of it is, like, more of it than I expected was actually right from history, up to and including the point where Rachel Weisz's character threatens to say that there is a lesbian relationship going on between the Queen and Emma Stone's character. Like that, whether that's true or not is left unknown to history. Would not surprise me if it was. But the idea that it was going to be suggested that was what happened is actually, like, that's documented history. That was going on, those sorts of discussions. And but I really liked the story without knowing the history. I had no idea how it was all going to play out. But one of the things that I found fascinating about the story was that as part of our slow progress through watching 100 movies, we watched All About Eve not that long ago. And True. This story is very similar to All About Eve in a lot of ways. Right? The Queen in this case, in All About Eve, it's like the world of theater as opposed to being a character.
Yep.
But otherwise, it's very similar. You have the established person who has complicated feelings about some of the things they do, but by and large, they're committed to what's going on. They take it seriously. And then, young girl comes in, seems innocent, help her out a bit until you realize that she's actually got her own stuff going on, and then the back and forth between them. It's not so similar that it felt to me like a bad thing in any way. In fact, I was kind of delighted to see a similar story transplanted into this setting, and then doubly delighted when I realized that it's actually based on real history also.
Yeah.
I thought that was just some neat parallels there. And I loved the costumes, too.
Yep.
I love that all three characters had real depth. I think it's by design that I came out of the movie feeling the most in the corner of Rachel Weisz's character. But Emma Stone's character has real motivations for why she's doing what she's doing, right? We see where she is at the start of the movie, getting booted out of the carriage into the mud.
Right.
So we can understand her motivations are coming from, I don't want to go back to that. I'm going to do what it takes. But we also see that, by approaching everything with the Machiavellian perspective of advancing her position at all cost without having the part of actually caring about the Queen, leads her to a position at the end where, did she win?
That's a phenomenal sequence where Rachel Weisz asked her did you win? Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, I'm here, and you're getting in your carriage.
But so Rachel Weisz is like, I'm playing an entirely different game than you are.
Yep.
Your end goal, apparently, was being the Queen's most trusted servant. And friend, sort of. And lover, sort of.
You ended up making sure you understood you were just a servant.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the end thing. I mean, that
Right.
was my take from the end scene. Like
Yeah.
again, not. I mean, I guess
Well, yeah,
the movie's been out.
yeah,
That's what I took from the end scene is that like that her kind of stepping on the bunny like didn't doesn't kill the bunny, but just sort of
right,
her like sort of ambivalence, like her cockiness that she had made it
right.
to the point where these stupid bunnies that are bouncing around everywhere, I
Yeah.
can kind of step on one till it squeaks,
Hmm.
and
It was just a casual cruelty that was so
yeah,
revealing to the queen. None of what you have said or done is because you really care about me or the things that I care about. It has all been just to get close to me.
right. And so then the queen forces her like back into servitude.
Hmm.
Even though she's in her beautiful dress and all this, she's like, no, you need to massage my like infected legs
Yeah.
and just do it. Even
Hmm.
so it's a weird like. I mean, it's an interesting like kind of transplant from like you said, her saying I'm playing a different game
Hmm.
to us like watching her like Emma Stone's character like feel this embarrassment of oh I went from this arrogance and so I was so cocky that I had won that I could step on this rabbit
Hmm.
to now I am forced back into servitude like maybe I and you don't like it doesn't ever go to whether she but you can see
Yeah.
there's very long lingering on her face
Of
as she is
like,
processing all of
maybe
this.
this, yeah. So this whole thing of like, I got what I thought I wanted, but it turns out that it's maybe not all it was cracked up to be because the motivations were ultimately hollow.
Right.
You know, is security worth what cost? At what cost? It's interesting to note that in the real history, Rachel Weisz's character basically was forced to leave England for a while with her husband, but they were welcomed by many other noble families throughout Europe and toured Europe for a while. And then when this Queen Anne died, they came back to court because it was no longer this personal thing anymore.
The other thing that I found interesting was that, Queen Anne actually had a husband who was alive during all of this that they did not include in the movie because obviously that's not the story they're telling.
Hmm.
But he did exist while all of these machinations were happening, and he was just sort of like
Somehow I missed that even when I was reading about the story.
Yeah, she was married and remained married through this whole thing. Yeah.
I guess that king was not especially involved in policy? Or maybe just that piece of the movie is a little bit more.
I mean, I feel like no. I mean, I feel like he was like she was the queen, and he was sort of the king. And at that time, like if the queen was the primary, like the actual royal family person,
Oh,
like
okay. So like so she was the one that was of royal blood and he
right,
was the husband to the queen as opposed to. Yeah, okay.
right,
That makes sense.
yeah, which doesn't necessarily make him.
Well, I mean, it makes sense to the extent that monarchy ever makes sense.
Yes,
Um,
but
you know.
again, something they didn't need to address in the film because to your point, it's like how do you make him? Because obviously he was like, I mean, I don't even know what. I mean, there's obviously some terrible modern cliches of like what that term is for like people
Hmm.
like husbands like that, but he was kind of like he wasn't necessary to the story basically.
Well, right. And
And he
I
probably
mean,
wasn't necessary to the story in history either.
certainly true also that in a lot of those types of marriages, it's not necessarily something where they have a deep and abiding love for one another. It's more of a, well, our parents decided that it was in the interest of two different nations for us to be married so that things can happen, you know.
Well, I mean, we even see a little bit of that with Emma Stone's character, who
Hmm.
she courts the Baron,
Hmm.
and then asks to like have the Queen endorse like her getting married out of her station to the Baron,
Right.
and then his like desire to like, you know, consummate their wedding night, and her like sort of disinterest and also focusing on Rachel Weisz's character in her mind while she just sort of arbitrarily like
Yeah, because it's that moment of, she was deprived of a definitive answer as to what had happened with Rachel Weisz's character, and so it was like, because I don't know, she could be out there doing something.
right. And he's like, it's our wedding night, and so she just sort of like passively like does some wedding
Yeah.
night stuff like, in
Yeah.
a way that is like
So yeah, disinterested. It's just like,
disinterested. Yeah.
it's like, fine. But yeah, so I really liked The Favorite. I was very pleasantly surprised. And it was, we talk about movies that, might not have gone to see. Like, until it received these nominations, I literally had not even heard of it. But I loved it. So that's a good example for me of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I would include this as in, again, movies that I may not have seen had it not received these nominations. I think it just, my passion for how much I enjoyed Free Solo when I didn't know that I was going to go see it, like, to sort of dwarf this. But this
Sure. I mean, it's not a competition. It's
right. This is also an example of something that I may not have seen had it not been nominated, and I am glad that I did because it was very good.
Yeah.
So.
I just realized this subtle irony of me saying, yeah, it's not a competition, this marathon we're doing about an awards ceremony. Not a competition.
Well, talking about a movie
Yeah.
where they're literally competing
Uh-huh.
for the Queen's attention.
Yeah. Versus a movie where a guy's trying to break a world record for something that's never been done before.
Right, competing for something that, like, also
Yeah.
is not necessary. Yeah.
Anyway, though,
Anyway.
yeah, The Favorite was one of my favorite movies last year, so I was very happy with it, and glad it got at least a little bit of recognition. I mean,
Yeah,
certainly
it was-
recognized in nominations, to be sure.
And it won, the girl who played the Queen won.
Yeah, Olivia Colman won as who she played the Queen. I think that was the only thing that it won for. Yes. But yeah, so in the meantime, then let's go ahead and just talk through the winning movies, and I'll propose that we go from the bottom to the top on our spreadsheet. Not because there's any like big spoiler reveals for these awards ceremony that happened almost 2 weeks ago, but just because I figure we'll have more to say about the bigger ones.
Give me 2 seconds, I'll be right back.
All right.
You can start talking about what we're going to do.
Well, so I think maybe then the first movie that we'll just recover that we'll talk about the winner was for best visual effects. The Oscar went to First Man, which was irritating to me because I saw 4 of the 5 nominees and that was the one that I didn't see, which is not the only category this year where that happened to me. But, that's just how things go sometimes. So without having seen it, I mean, I know it goes into space and stuff, but I'm not really sure what about its effects made that better than Avengers Infinity War, where there's, they made Josh Brolin into a giant purple guy and there's spaceships and stuff. Or, Ready Player One, where you get to see the Iron Giant, shoot gremlins or whatever.
That was my favorite.
It was. I mean, the visual effects in Ready Player One are certainly significant and interesting, and so I'm not sure what about First Man's effects were better, but it also may have been one of those situations where First Man's, that was one of the only categories that First Man was nominated in, and so people wanted to give that something.
Yeah. Did you skip film editing already?
I did, just because I was picking one that I figured might have less to say about. But yeah, so let's go ahead and do film editing then. So the winner was Bohemian Rhapsody. I saw all five, and I had some mixed feelings about Bohemian Rhapsody winning this, just because while I think there were definitely some sequences in that movie that were very well edited, uh, there were some that were not so much. And, some of that went around on Twitter a little bit, like some really just bizarre sequences where it seems like every line of dialogue needed to have two reaction shots to it in what's supposed to just be people talking at a cafe.
Right. So I agree with you that I would have picked Vice for this. But I
You
think
saw
that
Bohemian Rhapsody, did you?
yeah.
Okay, well, it doesn't say seen on the spreadsheet here. That's why I was just
It
questioning.
doesn't?
Nope.
Oh,
So your percentage is even higher than you thought, I guess.
about to go up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well done. Another percent for you.
So yes, I saw it, and I feel like I think we've discussed what the merits of the movie are. The lead up to the Live Aid concert and the recreation of that. I feel like this is honoring how well that movie told the story of that concert,
Right.
because it included the iconic, like the editing in that scene is the iconic shots of the concert cut with the emotional scenes we need to kind of complete the journey of the way the movie's, like where the movie's taking us. And in that sense, the editing was very good for
Yeah.
that. But just like everything in the movie, like that 10 minutes of editing was phenomenal.
Right.
And so I feel like that's what this award is doing, is giving the nod to that.
I think so too. And it's that illustration of when you watch a movie, what impression are you left with? And that's it. I mean, Bohemian Rhapsody's biggest strength is that it ends spectacularly in a way that the movie as a whole is fairly uneven, I think, but the ending is pretty damn good, and that's what people are left with when they watch it.
Yeah.
That's ask people, what do you remember about that movie? Everyone is going to say that final concert, because the rest of it is not bad, but not at the same level.
No, and I think that, I mean, I'm going to sort of skip ahead here real quick.
Okay.
I think that is also why it got the sound editing and the sound mixing.
Right.
It's that 10 minutes and what the impression that leaves you with and how good that was to make you feel like you were watching the concert you'd already seen with a different level of understanding.
Yeah.
That editing, that was sound editing, and that was sound mixing. That's what made that scene work.
Yeah.
And so they gave them those three, and I think,
Well,
and obviously Rami Malek.
yeah.
But outside of that, I don't think it got anything else. So,
well, we'll be going through the list, of course, but
anyway,
but I agree. I
those
think
were the next two on the list. So
yeah, those were the next two on the list, and so I think I agree completely. It won those because that last concert sequence is marvelous. It's very good, and it had strong source material to work with, obviously, in the sense that it's a classic concert, and great music to work with, but it pulled it off, and that's something that movies at their best can really capture, and it did. So I think it's worthy of some recognition of that, even if there are other movies that I liked more as full pieces.
Yep, I agree. So.
Yeah. All right, so best documentary feature we already talked about a little bit, which Free Solo won. Did you have anything else you wanted to cover about that?
No, I mean, I think that I saw two of them. I mean, I'm sure the others are good. It's so far above so many of the documentaries I've ever seen. I mean, I just from a visceral effect, which is weird. It's a weird thing to get from a documentary. But it gives you that. So that's it.
Great.
That's it.
All right. So, best makeup and hairstyling went to Vice. Um, we both saw that one and didn't see either of the other two. But I mean, there's no question that there was some significant makeup and hairstyling going on there that was very effective. Taking actors that don't look like that and making them look like that.
Right.
That's what you do, right?
And also not feeling like it was some sort of like weird caked on thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was natural. Like both Christian Bale and I mean, well, not both. I would say Christian Bale, Amy Adams, and Steve Carell
Mm-hmm.
all had hair and makeup done to them, but it all felt very natural within what they were trying to do.
Well,
So,
and Sam Rockwell some, although he didn't
oh
need as
yeah,
much.
yeah, that wasn't as dramatic, you
Yeah,
know. So,
he didn't need as much help to look like W. Um, so the next category is best costume design, which went to Black Panther. And as much as I was just saying that I really loved the costumes in The Favorite, I mean Black Panther, there was some amazing costume design work in that movie. There's so many different costumes that all had their own very distinct but still cool looks.
yep.
That was a costume bonanza, that movie.
Yeah, and I feel like it was almost a little bit of an homage to the special effects without like being in the visual effects category. They're kind of leaning the costume design
Well,
and visual effects
well,
like
production
together.
design too, because production
Yeah,
design Black Panther also won. But I mean, even before the award ceremony, that's kind of what we talked about with Black Panther is that as much as it does a lot of things really well, a big part of where it really shines is just creating this entire society, this nation of Wakanda, and making
right.
it feel not only real, but really cool and interesting. And
Yeah,
and distinct from things we know in a way that feels meaningful and all of that, like production design and costume design, that's what goes into that stuff.
yeah.
And so it did great at those things. And so like I was saying, I liked The Favorite and I liked the costumes in The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. I liked the other movies I saw with production design. You have Roma and The Favorite in there too. But yeah, Black Panther. I feel like if there were movies that categories that I really thought Black Panther deserved to win, it was those two.
Yes.
Um, so that jumped ahead one on our spreadsheet, but we also have the best cinematography, which we covered just a little bit already. Um, the winner was Roma, but I think you mentioned earlier. I think we were on the same page that I didn't see Never Look Away. I didn't see Cold War, but The Favorite, Roma, the cinematography is really notable and really good in both of those. A Star Is Born, I was a little surprised just because, like, it's not bad. It's definitely not like it's nothing wrong with it, but it didn't feel like on the same level as Roma and The Favorite to me.
Really.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I didn't dislike any of it, but I didn't, like we've talked about sometimes, like with score or something like that, you can end up with does the cinematography call attention to itself or does it dissolve and, just enhance invisibly?
Right.
And so maybe it falls more into the latter category, so I just didn't notice as much. But I just know that of those three that I saw, Roma and The Favorite, I can definitely say I noticed the cinematography being incredible in both of those movies. A Star Is Born, I was like, I guess. I didn't really notice the cinematography in it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe I should have been paying more attention to that when I watched it.
Yeah.
um, all right.
Next, look like
Want to cover score and song?
so score, we had why? So song was "Shallow" in A Star Is Born.
Yeah.
Oh, and score was Black Panther. Which I think both of those. I mean, I'm so happy with those.
Yeah.
I didn't see "Star Is Born," but I have heard "Shallow." I saw it performed live at the Oscars. I know
Yeah.
there's some memes. You've probably seen the memes
Yeah.
joke, but it was a good performance. Like it was. It's a strong song.
It's a very good song. It's. I think that it makes perfect sense to me for it to win because for all of the reasons that you'd expect. Like it's a great song. Lady Gaga performs it very well. And when they do it as a duet, like both of them are good in it. Like we see the song done both as a solo and as a duet in the movie. But it is also a song that is meaningful within the story of the movie. It's not just a song that's in the end credits and maybe shares some thematic elements. Like it's a plot point, this song.
Right.
Because like the context for that song in the movie is that, you know, her character who writes songs but doesn't sing her own songs when she goes to perform as a singer, and she's nervous and all that, but she kind of meets him. They've had kind of an interesting, you know, flirty evening where they're connecting, and she kind of sings it to herself a little bit, and he likes it. And then in his next concert, he basically tells her, come on stage and sing that song. And then she's initially reluctant, and he basically says, I'm going to sing it for you if you don't come on and sing it. Which I want to, you know, if we were talking more about that movie, I would want to talk a little bit about how that's maybe not cool for him to do. I mean, it works out okay in the movie because she does actually go out and do it and it turns great. But I just mean, that's kind of like, it's a lot of pressure to put on her without letting her know that that was going to happen. But in any event, though, she does go out and she sings it, and then he plays with it, and they sing it together, and it's all about this idea of they were kind of playing around with this flirty connection, but sensing the presence of something that could be more and could be deeper, and that's what the song is about. And so it's a great song, and it's meaningful in the story, which is like, that's everything you want in this category, I think.
Yep. And then, yeah, I mean, Black Panther, I mean, we've talked just about, like, again, it's part of the production design, part of, like, just the whole way the movie's put together. It's really good. And even though I feel like there's a little bit of a nod here, even though, like, some of the, like, auxiliary, like, songs about the movie, like some of the Kendrick Lamar stuff, like that isn't actually technically part of the soundtrack, or maybe it is.
This companion album thing.
Yeah, it's like the companion. Like I feel like this is like an acknowledgement that was really good too, because it was. So. Yeah.
All right. So for best foreign film, the only one either of us saw was Roma, but that won. And yay! I mean, it's hard to compare against movies that we didn't see, but Roma sure is a good movie. So, you know, having it win felt good, nonetheless. Especially since it really deserved significant, you know, recognition, because I think it's a great movie.
Yep.
Yeah. But it's hard to compare it to the others if we haven't seen them. So best adapted screenplay went to Black Klansman, which, you know, we talked about that one in our last update, but I really liked, you know, as we talked about, what I really liked about that movie is that it felt like it was able to find a really clear voice around an interesting historical true story about a messy subject that is a broader issue, but really manages to have a clear voice, and it has something to say, and it says it. And I really liked all of those things about it, and a lot of that is screenplay.
Yeah, and upon reflection, like after like we talked about it, and not emphatic. I was gonna say emphatic.
My defense of the ending.
Your defense of the ending and like all the things that I had hesitations about. I feel like this was an appropriate award for this to win. I mean, this was the strength of the movie. I mean, the performances were great, and but they were competing against some really strong other.
There were some strong categories this year in the acting categories.
Right, but yes, there are some criticisms about whether or not Green Book should have been the best picture, but for Spike Lee to like make a big deal about how like this should have been it instead, like I don't know that. I feel like he should. I mean,
yeah,
this was the right thing for you to win, man. Like just accept it, like be happy about it, and he was.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know that this would have been the winner if it wasn't Green Book.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Is that his criticism of like it wasn't just a criticism that Green Book was the best picture. It was that it stole it from him, and I didn't feel like that was an appropriate reaction to. You just won your first Oscar, man. Like this is a good category for you to have it.
Yeah,
you earn this.
I agree generally, but I feel like given that what Green Book kind of does, like the reason I think it would feel a little bit more personal is because it is also about racial issues in a similar time period, but in a much more generic crowd-pleasing way.
Right, and there's the extra layer of that. He was snubbed from the Oscars for Do the Right Thing, the year that Driving Miss Daisy.
I think that was less of a real complaint and more of a like ironic observation, though.
Yes, but it does.
Yeah. Every time someone's driving someone somewhere.
Right, you got to look at it from his perspective. Like, okay, every time there's one of these movies where like a white person and a black person are driving in a car and like having this heart to heart, they're winning Oscars, and yet my like more visceral, like real race movies are not winning.
Yeah,
and so I get it a little bit.
And there's something to be said too. I think just like this goes back to that idea that why I thought that the cut to real like contemporaneous stuff like Charlottesville and everything was so powerful at the end of BlacKkKlansman, and kind of what he's saying here, I think, is that happened back when Do the Right Thing came out and Driving Miss Daisy, and this year he loses to the same kind of movie. So like the United States and its understanding of racial issues has not changed since then, is kind of one way to look at that.
Yeah. And I think that part is a fair criticism.
Yeah. Well, and so we'll talk more about Green Book. I have in some ways softened on it a little bit, but we'll talk more about that. But I think
next. So
yeah. Well, the only thing I was like. The only hesitation I had here was just that I really, really loved Can You Ever Forgive Me? And so I kind of would have maybe liked to see that win too, just because I liked it so much. But I agree this is a good category for BlacKkKlansman to win, because I really like that, and a lot of that is down to the screenplay.
Yeah.
But yes, so for Best Original Screenplay, Green Book was the winner. And so when I say that I've softened on it a little bit, it's really kind of only in the sense that, like, I watched it and I sensed that it was not really challenging me in any way. it's a crowd pleasing movie, but it does please the crowd, at least the crowd that it's mostly targeting, which is mostly white people. You know, so, and I think that's, that's where like the criticisms of it come from. I think is that it's making a movie about racial issues by and for white people. But
Yeah.
there are also, I think, as we talked about when we talked about it previously, there are people for whom the more direct and confrontational presentation of these issues, like in Black Klansman, would push them away. And we could say that as a criticism of those people, perhaps, but it's true they exist. And so a softer message that is more not not appetizing, that's not the word I'm looking for. More digestible by by people who are a little less open to seeing these things clearly. I think there's something to it, and again, it's like it's not a bad movie. It's just that it feels like the same. It's kind of like Spike Lee was saying. It feels like Driving Miss Daisy winning again. That's what it feels like.
Yep.
It feels like there's not really been any advance in understanding since then.
Well, I mean, they switched.
Well, yeah,
Who was driving?
right, yeah.
Joking.
No, I
mean,
know,
but
I
it's
know.
like
Yeah,
that is like literally the extent of the movie
Yeah.
is.
Uh-huh.
They changed who was driving who to tell a different story.
right,
And
yeah. And I mean, there are great things about that movie. I would not, frankly, have said that the screenplay was one of them, personally. Especially up against The Favorite and Roma. And then Vice is in there, too. So it's like, I, you know, I,
Yeah, I mean, Vice was my favorite out of all
Yeah.
of these. But again,
so I didn't see First Reformed, but of the four that I saw, Green Book was my least favorite of the four in terms of the screenplay. So that one was a disappointing choice to me, because it's one thing if everyone wants to say, "Hey, let's give the best picture to a movie that kind of made crowds happy, and it kind of said something, but not in a too confrontational way." And if they want to give that the best picture, then okay. But I don't honestly understand the justification for why they think the screenplay is that great, because it felt very ordinary to me. But anyway.
Anyway,
So you want to come
into the big
cover
ones.
supporting actor and actress?
Supporting actress was Regina King from If Beale Street Could Talk. Neither of us saw that.
Yeah, and it was like I was saying earlier with visual effects. Only for both of us this time, the only movie of the five that we didn't see was the one that won. So obviously Regina King must have been great in that movie, so good for her. But we can't comment on it. So I know that she beat four great performances. So
Yeah, I mean, because we know what Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz did.
mhm.
We know what Marina de Tavira did. And we've even talked about, well, actually, I don't know if we talked about it that much about when we discussed Vice.
Yeah, we talked about Amy Adams.
We talked about it a little bit, but like, I think maybe in the first conversation before we had our deeper conversation, like when I went to see Vice with my wife, like she said that it made it look like Cheney's wife was the actual real villain, and I didn't take that from the movie, but I get how you could get there,
Right.
and that's all in Amy Adams' performance. Like she doesn't play a villain, but the way that she sort of like kind of guides him along, like you could see where someone could lead with that.
Yeah.
So I thought all those performances were amazing. So if Regina King like legitimately was better than that, then awesome.
Yeah. For sure.
Best supporting actor was Mahershala Ali.
I think it's
for Green Book.
Mahershala.
Mahershala
But
Ali
yeah, that's
for
it's yeah.
Green
It's an
Book.
unusual name. I think he would agree.
Um,
um,
he beat Adam Driver in
mhm,
Black Klansman. He beat Sam Elliott from Star is Born.
mhm,
Richard Grant from Can You Ever Forgive Me, and Sam Rockwell for Vice. I haven't seen Green Book, but
mhm.
this for me just like tangentially related to it feels like maybe one of its most deserved.
Yeah, well, if you recall, the praise that I am 100% willing to give Green Book is that the performances are great.
Right.
Both Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali are great in the movie. They give great performances and they elevate what felt to me like an ordinary script.
Right.
And so that I'm certainly happy to see, like, of any of the awards that Green Book might have won, that's actually the one that I'm happiest with, because I really like him. If anyone doesn't know, he's also the one of the leads in True Detective season 3, which just wrapped up.
Yep.
He's great in that too because he's great in everything. I've never disliked him in anything I've ever seen him in. And so he's good in the movie too. He's good in Green Book because it's he's a good actor and he does a great job. So I saw all five this year, and yeah, I mean, it was a strong category this year, and I'm fine with him winning.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go into the
Yeah. So
non-supportings.
So for Best Actress, I was very pleased with myself this year for having managed to see all five, just because sometimes Best Actress is a category that ends up being consisting of only smaller indie movies that are not necessarily as easy to see, because those are the movies that tend to have great female roles. And so the fact that that's less true this year, that three of the five had significant, many other awards going for them. But also, I'm just happy that I was able to see them all. I'm happy about that. So Olivia Colman, as we previously said, won for The Favorite, her portrayal of Queen Anne. And I kind of had a sentimental place in my heart for Melissa McCarthy and Can You Ever Forgive Me for this. I think that my own vote would have gone to Melissa McCarthy, but Olivia Colman is great in The Favorite for sure. And so
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with the winning here. I mean, it was a strong year for this category. And like even Glenn Close in The Wife, like I didn't really love that movie, but she's great in it for sure.
Yeah, because didn't two others of these split the Golden Globes that weren't Olivia Colman?
I don't remember.
I know Glenn Close won,
I
and
think
I think Yalitza Aparicio won. Okay, because I think they put Star is Born and The Wife into like musical something or other, and
yeah. Here I can pull it up real quick here.
yeah, I saw you like trying to pull it up.
um so let's see. Best performance by an actress. They have so many categories. Um, television series,
I
motion
mean, there are two
picture.
obviously two movie ones.
Yeah. Supporting. This place that I pulled. Oh man. The place where I pulled up the list has them in such a weird order. Maybe it's the order they were announced in. Okay, so best performance by an actress in a motion picture drama was Glenn Close, who won against Lady Gaga, Nicole Kidman in Destroyer, who didn't get an Oscar nomination, Melissa McCarthy in Can You Ever Forgive Me, and Rosamund Pike from A Private War. And then best performance by an actress in a motion picture, musical, or comedy went to Olivia Colman for The Favorite.
Oh, so she did win that.
Yeah.
Okay, for the comedy.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. So the controversy was that Gaga didn't get put into the musical or
Yeah, well,
comedy,
the whole
but
musical or comedy versus drama has always been a weird division in that.
right. But okay, so she did win that. So yeah, so it wouldn't have mattered either way. She won her category that she was in the Golden Globes and won this, which is
Yeah.
good.
So
Okay.
the thing that I was really struck by in the Golden Globes, though, is that just reveals the whole category distinction as bizarre, is the idea that Green Book was the winner for Best Picture Comedy or Musical, which I would call it a drama, and then Bohemian Rhapsody won for drama. So, okay. But yes, in any case, Olivia Colman won for the Golden Globe
Got
there.
it.
But
Okay.
where is my spreadsheet? There it is. But yeah, so I'm not sad to see her win. It was a very strong group this year, and I kind of would have liked to see it go to Melissa McCarthy, though. I just really loved her in that movie. But so then we have Best Actor, and I think before the ceremony, we both kind of talked about how Rami Malek as playing Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody was it's a remarkable performance, and it goes beyond just an impersonation, and it's really he's great in it, and I feel like he's deserving of the award.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said that this was literally a two-horse race between him and Christian Bale, because they were both so good, and I'm not disappointed at all that it went to him.
Yeah.
So
Viggo Mortensen was great in Green Book. Bradley Cooper was great in A Star Is Born, but I feel like Rami Malek is who I would have voted for. And I say that as someone who has expressed criticisms of some aspects of that movie, but his performance is certainly not one of those aspects. You want to cover Best Director?
Best Director was Alfonso Cuarón for Roma. Again, my favorite was Adam McKay, but I think this is well deserved.
Yeah.
I mean, Roma was great. Despite that, so
Yeah. Well, and again, if when we talk about some of these movies, and if they're not going to get the big one, what category maybe should they get? And the idea that directing is where that movie really shined, I would tend to agree. I mean, I think it was great in a number of ways, but directing plays into all of those things.
correct.
So I think that felt like a good win to me as well, especially since it wasn't going to win many other things that it was nominated for. All right, so Best Animated Feature went to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which I was very happy to see because it was my favorite of those five by a wide margin.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but that was based on not just your commentary on it, but everybody who I knew who had seen it. It seemed like it was the best one by far.
Yeah, yeah. And that one's available digitally now, I think. So people should check it out, even if on the TV screen it's not the same as being on the big screen, but still great. It's a great movie. It's going to definitely be great no matter how you see it.
Maybe that'll be what I do after we break.
All right, and so last but not least, in fact, most. Is the Best Picture, which we've certainly already talked about. It's not a spoiler for anybody. Green Book won. We covered a little bit that there's been some criticism of it, and we've kind of talked about that some. Is that it's a very safe movie in many respects, and in some ways, I think, kind of like Spike Lee sort of illustrated, it's perhaps being made on a subject where being safe about it is not really the best way to approach it anymore. If making safe, feel-good, crowd-pleasing movies about that subject does not produce meaningful societal change,
then what's the point?
Yeah. So I think that like there was people that I follow on Twitter who were kind of in a boat of saying they would almost want to see like anything but Green Book win, which I think I don't know. I feel like I didn't feel that strongly. Not that I would have wanted it to win per se, but it also to dislike it so much as to say like I don't even care what wins as long as it's not that. That seems excessive in my opinion. Um, but this was the first year in a while that I was able to see all of them, all the Best Picture nominees before the ceremony, and so I was proud of myself in that case. It was made a little bit easier this year, though. Helped both of us out in terms of our final percentage that there were several movies that got a lot of nominations, and being able to see those bumps the percentage up pretty significantly. But I know that I think in terms of what I would have liked to see win, I probably would have voted for Black Panther, Black Klansman, The Favorite, or Roma to win over Green Book. Maybe Bohemian Rhapsody too, although I had my issues with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would think agree with some of those. I haven't seen it, but I've heard people actually make a good case for Star is Born.
Star is Born is very well made of a kind of movie that I don't super care for.
So I haven't seen it, so I don't know how this criticism holds up. But a friend of mine said if the last song had been better, the movie would have won. And I don't know what the last song means. I don't know.
I don't. Well, I
don't
feel
know
like
any of this.
by drawing a
arguing
direct
this point.
parallel to what we've talked about with Bohemian Rhapsody, I could see it in that regard. It doesn't end on a high note, for one. So, like in that sense, and I don't mean that literally. I mean thematically. Did we lose you? Lost your video, at least. Are you with me still or no? I hear you.
Sorry, I have a delivery driver trying to come in.
Okay.
It somehow trumped my iPad. Okay.
Aha. All right. Well, so I've lost your video, but I still hear you.
Okay.
But yeah, so A Star is Born is very well made, and it's got a lot of good stuff going for it. But, you know, what we talked about with Bohemian Rhapsody is that I think a lot of people came away from that movie just really in love with it because the ending is just so good that it makes you feel that way. And the ending is designed to have you leaving the theater feeling that way. Whereas, without getting too much into the spoiler details of it, Star is Born really doesn't. And it's just like, because it's telling a different kind of story, but it ends in a way that didn't make me in love with the movie. Not because it's bad, it's just because it's not really a story that I usually seek out otherwise.
Right.
And so I think it does a lot of things really well, but it's not something I didn't like the story as much. And having looked up that there are 4 different versions of it and that they all pretty much have that same plot, it kind of makes me feel like, why is this the story that people keep remaking?
Got a delivery.
Yep. And so, you know, I think that it's great that there are lots of people who love it. Well, I'm trying to vamp in case you need to get away from the computer for a second.
I mean, I do. Yeah.
Okay. So I think that I think it's great for the people who wanted that movie that they like it. And that's good. And I never want to tell anybody they shouldn't like it. And so none of my criticisms of the movie have anything, honestly, to do with anything like that it did wrong or bad. Is really just kind of like, it's kind of the opposite of The Favorite for me in that regard, that Whereas The Favorite feels like they took a bunch of ingredients that are pretty much guaranteed to make me love a movie, and then they blended them together well into this great little cocktail with, so sharp flavor and a teeny little bit of bitterness, but a lot of, fun alcohol or whatever, in my
Right.
weird tortured analogy here. And A Star is
Um,
Born is just something I just don't like as much. And it's not because it's bad, it's just different tastes. So, for people who really like movies like A Star is Born, I'm sure it's fantastic. And again, like I don't want like I feel this weird need to sort of somehow justify that my feelings about it are not indicative of the movie's quality, but I don't know. It didn't do it for me. It does
I
a
haven't
lot of
seen
things
it.
really well, but it just ultimately left me feeling like it was not one of my favorites last year.
Yeah, and I mean, I wasn't going to launch into it again tonight, but I mean, Vice for me was the best movie of the year by far. But I also recognize why it wasn't for everybody.
Yeah.
So
So I think this year there were a lot of people not happy with Green Book winning. But then again, I guess there was a lot of people that really liked it, you know. I guess like Steven Spielberg was quoted as saying that a vote against Green Book is a vote against cinema, which is frankly I feel like he should know better than to say things like that, but whatever.
that doesn't. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But okay.
No, and it's like if he really loved it, then great. Hey, if people should support the movies they love, and fantastic. It's not for everybody, but for the people it's for, it's very good. And again, it's like I went and saw it, and I did not dislike it. I think it is very good at doing what it's doing. And it's just that I think it is a reasonable part of the meta conversation to suggest that it should set its sights higher.
Yep, that's what I've heard. So
Yeah. But yeah, so in any case, I guess that covers all of the awards. I was saying just before we started recording for this that I actually didn't even manage to watch the awards ceremony. I only just read the winners on a list because I was at a place where I was not able to watch the awards live, and I just once I knew all the answers, the idea of making my way through the whole ceremony felt tedious in anticipating it.
honestly, I mean, it was less tedious this year because there wasn't the fact there wasn't a host. It actually cranked along at a really good clip. Um, it had a good balance this year. It's one of the best that it's been in a long time. Um,
What a weird result for them to tumble back asswards into having no host and then having that be an improvement.
yeah, and I've never disliked any of the hosts. It's just it, what I've realized in watching this year is that it doesn't add enough to it.
You don't miss
we're
it
not
when it's
watching.
gone.
Yeah, you don't miss it when it's gone. Like you're not watching it for the pithy comments about
The
whatever.
opening monologue.
Yeah, you don't need any of that. Like we're watching it because we want to see who wins, and we want to see the occasional like great performance, like the Gaga Bradley Cooper performance was amazing. You want to see the intermittent controversial one, like when Spike Lee wins and you know gives a very political speech and then obviously takes shots at the fact that he didn't win any others. Like that, like that's the part that you want to watch. Like I don't so I didn't like you said, I didn't realize that not having a host was going to be part of the benefit of it, but the fact that it just cranked along, you just there was it never felt stalled,
One of
which
the
it did
things,
sometimes.
one of the things that I definitely heard in the margins, though, that was there were a lot of people very irritated that there was a lot of people left out of the in memoriam montage.
I mean,
Some,
I didn't
yeah,
fact
Bill
check it.
Paxton,
So.
um, Adam West, Jim Neighbors. I guess Adam West is more of a TV star, but Ricky Jay.
Yeah, those are all fair. I guess I didn't fact check it at the time. So
Well, I
it's
don't know. I
yeah.
mean, it's
I mean, they're
and then
right.
David Cassidy, Tom Petty. Um, but in any event, so I heard a little bit about that, but I don't know that I would have necessarily myself noticed them missing. But
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't. Not. Yeah, but
but in any event, though, so maybe this whole idea of having just the people who come in and do their little bit before they read the envelope is enough. They don't need to have a separate host.
mm,
You know,
that's
unless they
my
want to
feeling.
bring back Billy Crystal to do his musical number. That was the last time I remember being interested in any specific part of the hosting gig. You know, back when that used to be the thing. Like, what's his musical number going to be this year? Um, but yeah, so I think that does it for our 2019 Oscar Marathon. Um, we set out every year to find movies that we wouldn't have watched otherwise that we enjoy, and I think we both found some this year, and that's great.
Yep.
There were some categories we liked and some categories we didn't, which is always the case. I don't think there were any that enrage me the way that a couple have over the years, but
True. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think the ones that I cared the most about, I'm mostly happy with. Um, Green Book winning Best Picture, we talked about, but a lot of the others, like I think the only one this year that would have really just infuriated me was if Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse didn't win Best Animated Feature, just because it's so clearly the best of those five, in my opinion. But yeah, so any closing thoughts on our 2019 effort?
Nope.
All right. Have any? Well, I don't know. It's early in the year to say. Have you seen any movies that you think will be on the list for next year?
No. Because the whole first part of this year, I watched movies that were on this list.
Yeah, yeah. Same
So,
for me, except I did see Captain Marvel, which I really liked. Which I don't know if that'll be on the list or not. Maybe not. If it was for anything, it might could be for like score or visual effects and stuff like that. But you've also got Avengers Endgame coming, so if they want to give visual effects to a Marvel movie, that'll probably be the one. But okay, so we'll go ahead and leave it there for now. So if you've been following along on our effort or doing your own marathon, thanks for joining us, and go out and watch good movies, everybody.
yep.